can still remember how that music used to make me smile. And I knew if I had my chance that I could make those people dance, and maybe they'd be happy for a while. But February made me shiver with every paper I delivered. Bad news on the doorstep. I couldn't take one more step. I can't remember if I cried when I read about his widowed bride. Something touched me deep inside the day. The music died. So bye-bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And then good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, this'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die. Did you write the book of love? And do you have faith in God above? If the Bible tells you so. Now do you believe in rock and roll? Can music save your mortal soul? And can you teach me how to dance real slow? Well, I know that you're in love with him, 'cause I saw you dancing in the gym. You both kicked off your shoes. Man, I dig those rhythm and blues. I was a lonely teenage bronc and buck with a pink carnation and a pickup truck. But I knew I was out of luck the day the music died. I started singing bye-bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye and singing, this'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die. Now for 10 years we've been on our own, and moss grows fat on a rolling stone. But that's not how it used to be. When the jester sang for the king and queen in a coat he borrowed from James Dean, and a voice that came from you and me. Oh, and while the king was looking down, the jester stole his thorny crown. The courtroom was adjourned. No verdict was returned. And while Lenin read a book on Marx, a quartet practiced in the park, and we sang dirges in the dark. The day the music died, we were singing bye-bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye and singing, this'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die. Helter-skelter in the summer swelter, the birds flew off with a fallout shelter. 8 miles high and falling fast. It landed foul on the grass. The players tried for a forward pass with the jester on the sidelines in a cast. Now the halftime air was sweet perfume while the sergeants played a marching tune. We all got up to dance, oh, but we never got the chance, 'cause the players tried to take the field. The marching band refused to yield. Do you recall what was revealed the day the music died? We started singing bye-bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the watched him on the stage, my hands were clenched in fists of rage. No angel born in hell could break that Satan's spell. And as the flames climbed high into the night, to light the sacrificial rite, I saw Satan laughing with delight. The day the music died, he was singing bye bye Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, this'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die. I met a girl who sang the blues, and I asked her for some happy news, but she just smiled and turned away. I went down to the sacred store where I'd heard the music years before, but the man there said the music wouldn't play. And in the streets the children screamed, the lovers cried and the poets dreamed, but not a word was spoken. The church bells all were broken, and the three men I admire most, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, they caught the last train for the coast. The day the music died, and they were singing bye bye Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, this'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die. They were singing bye bye Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, this'll be the day that I die. The road is long, with a many a winding tongue that leads us to who knows where, who knows where. But I'm strong enough to carry him. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. my brother. He's my brother. I am a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the wire.
Wow, I think the family's going to be rather chuffed to see so many people here this morning. Thank you for being here. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Please turn your phones down or off. They quite often like to ring or ting in the middle of a funeral service. It could be quite embarrassing as well. If you haven't been here before, there's a restroom just round through the catering lounge. And if the family don't know who you are, just let them know your connection with Ian and how that, the reason why you're here today. I did hear someone say, gosh, I'm not sure if I know many people here, so I just thought I might mention that. So before we start, we've actually got something quite special to share with you, and it's going to set the scene for what's to come. So just sit back and enjoy.
About 1968, Bill was looking for a mechanic at Southern Transport when he first started off and built the new workshop in Hodapuni Avenue. And I applied for the job and got it. So, well, I was one of 5 mechanics and 3 apprentices in those days, look after 50 trucks. Things have changed a bit over the time. So that's when I first met Bill. And about 2 years after that, an old chap, Jack McEwen, actually Ox McEwen's grandfather, he set the workshop up, and one day he just said to Bill, I've done the job, now I'm gone. Bill approached me to see if I wanted to take over the workshop, and at that stage I was about 23 or 24, I was the youngest mechanic in the workshop, and I thought about it for a while, but then thought, well, I don't know if this is really going to work. The other guys were there before me, and I really enjoyed the job, but however, I was happy to stay, so I said to Bill, thanks, but no thanks, I'll carry on. He employed a chap, and he come in, he was quite different to Jack, and things sort of changed a bit, so after about 1971, I think it was, I left, and then over the years we always kept in contact, and another chap who started working for Bill about the same time, Les Kennedy, he stayed on and started doing the trucks, because it was at that time when Bill bought his first truck for the collection, and funnily enough, his grandfather's truck used to be our shop hack when I was an apprentice mechanic. So, but anyway, Les carried on doing all the restoration side of things, and when he got to about 70 something, he decided it was time to knock off, and Bill had asked me several times if I was interested in, or knew of anybody who might be interested in restoring his trucks. By chance, I was at the airport picking up my nephew who was back from my brother's 50th birthday, and Bill was sitting in the lounge waiting on Clive Lynn to come back to do the finishing touches on his book, Wheels and Deals. And while we're talking, sitting there waiting, Bill said to me, you haven't found anybody to restore my trucks yet? And I said, oh, I might be interested myself. And with that, the plane arrived. Bill introduced me to Clive Lind, and we parted our ways, and about 3 months later Bill rang me up and asked if I was still interested in restoring his trucks. And I said yes I was, but things had sort of slowed down a wee bit with the sale of our property, and but he said, oh, that's all right. He said, that's all I wanted to know. He said, I've had different people ask me if they'd come and if they could come and restore the trucks, and Bill said, oh, sooner you do it because I know you. So about November that year, 1999, it all happened, and that's when I started back working for Bill, restoring. So that was the early part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, it just sort of happens really. It's like, I suppose it's a bit like connecting the dots or making a jigsaw puzzle. If there's a piece missing, you just have to work out what it is and make it. And like a lot of cases of those early trucks, we just had to make the bits because there was nothing else to get them off. So every truck I'd done become easier because you knew how you'd handled a similar problem on the previous one. And where the first one took me a year, we got this where it wasn't long we were doing 2 or 3 years. Not that I was doing them completely on my own, because our painting was done outside, and I had other people for specialist jobs that I would bring in, but we done everything in-house, sort of under my guidance sort of thing, yeah. Like that's what we started with there. So it was again a matter of pulling it apart and finding out what we had. There was no body whatsoever. The radiator was completely rotted out. But in saying that, all the tubes are the original ones from 1914 in the radiator. But we had to build everything else to put them into. First thing we done, we got it all lying on the floor in the old tyre shop, and welded the chassis together, then started hanging the bits together on it. It was funny because we had no information. After I got it finished, Bill found a handbook on it. The only thing that's really wrong on it is that it should have had a soft top with hood bows type. It should have folded down. But this book that Bill found, I had to make the windscreen, the irons to hold the windscreen and all that sort of stuff. And we built the cab just like we thought it should look. And when we found this book, it actually was everything is just very close to what it should have been anyway. You can see how little work it's done. Those are the original tyres on it, and they were never worn out. And the front one's the same, but obviously it had trouble with the diff. It had been broken and welded, and it was broken again when I started putting it together, so we had to do a lot of remanufacturing to make that work. The parts that we had weren't badly worn, but it was just, it got pulled to pieces because obviously the diff were giving trouble. And of course by the time 32 come, well, pneumatic tyres were around instead of solid tyres, so everybody was doing that sort of thing.
Well, that was rather special, wasn't it? That's for sure. A wee bit of history, so everybody gets a real feeling of all the hard work and probably a lot of fun along the way that happened during those years. But it was only on Wednesday that there was a tap on the door at the Winton Funeral Home. It's only a wee building, and there was Shona. And I greeted her with a smile, and I had a tea towel in my hand of all things. I was fluffing around doing something else. And when she was initially standing there, she said to me, or asked me, what do you think, what's the thing that we need to do, or the expectations to do when my husband dies? And I was thinking that was going to be a long way off, but sadly it was just really the next day. And I was surprised, and as our conversation became so relaxed, and we talked about a lot of other things in life, and Shona was there for quite a while, and it was just so relaxed and natural that one would feel that we weren't talking about death at all. So I think it did make things a little bit easier to be able to understand what to expect further along down the track. But welcome to this service to share and to remember the many memories of Ian James RIDD. I'm Sally, and it is an absolute privilege to be standing here today to help in Ian's final journey. And one of the most poignant things that transpired that day when Shona was with me was her smile. And I could see that she was reflecting on all the many wonderful years that she and Ian had had together. And she told me more than once that they had been married for 59 years. And I did find out that you've really been together quite a bit longer than that. So they've got lots of happy times together. And it was during those many years of togetherness that Ian and Shona were to raise, love and nurture their 3 children, Sharon, Jeff and Glenn. Now, many good values were instilled onto them, especially the boys, as both their parents were role models of naughtiness. I heard quite a lot of stories, so a lot of those will be shared a bit later. Oh, hang on. Hold the phone. That's Ian. He's just saying, please turn that phone off. Don't panic. Hopefully you're the only one who's embarrassed today. The kids' partners have been welcomed into the family of James, Sharon and Rach. And then when Ian and Shona became grandparents and great-grandparents, well, they were both thrilled and proud. So thank you for being here today to support this family, and to those of you who have travelled distances. And we do realise that not everyone can attend a service, so we have the live stream going, and I'd like to welcome all of those who are watching from a distance. If you didn't get a chance to sign one of the pages in the books at the door, please do so before you leave, because they are a really nice reminder of everyone that's joined today. And then you're invited to stay for refreshments. And then the family will be leaving with Ian for his burial at the Forest Hill Cemetery. So it is a lovely day. You won't need your gumboots out there, I can rest assure you of that. So come along as well. It's a beautiful place to be able to rest. On behalf of the family, I'd also like to thank the oncology team, the doctors and staff from the Southland Hospital. Hospice Southland, especially Haiti and Hawthorndale Village, who went out of their way to accommodate the family. They not only cared for Ian with dignity, but provided platters of cheese and crackers, and there were sandwiches. And Ian was in their care for 6 months and 1 day, which enabled Shona to take a breath and to know that Ian was in safe and caring hands when she or the family were unable to be by his side. But there have been family and extended family who have unconditionally been there, Carol and Stuart, along with many others. And not to embarrass you at all, but the one person that your family really wanted to thank was you, Shona. You've just been there with absolute dignity, love and respect, and you've never questioned anything, so they couldn't do it to you themselves, so they've asked me if I would, so I'm sorry to do that, but I think it's important as well. So I will carry on with all those wonderful memories that we talked about the other day. Lots of memories were shared on Saturday, and with stories crisscrossing the table, I really did have a bit of a job to keep up and write everything down. But for the main part, we will hear a glimpse of Ian's life through those memories and by others who will be speaking shortly. It was here in Invercargill that Ian was born to his parents, Jack and Dory, on the 26th of December 1946. He was the little brother to Alex and was followed by Neville. Now, Neville's very special. His name, Neville, is spelt with 3 E's, because when his dad registered his death, he spelt it wrong. But that's okay. He's forgiven his dad. The 3 boys were then joined by their little sister Dorothy, who must have been a delight. Then, they've all married, and their partners, Helen, Christine and Colin, have enabled Ian and Shona to have lots of nephews and nieces, so they've had a lovely extended family. Schooling. Well, schooling started at Makarewa Primary, Otaramaka and Southern Technical College. And Ian enjoyed playing rugby while at school, and he continued to play, and he was on the wing, a winger, for Otaramaka because he was known to be a wee bugger. So he fitted the part quite well, and he played until he was married, as I've just said. And being born on Boxing Day, well, he certainly had his own mind when he was young. He decided, well, since his birthday was on Boxing Day, there was no way in the world he was going to stick around school till he was 15. So he left at the end of the school year when he was 14. That decision led Ian to working at home on the family farm for around 6 months, and then he got himself an apprenticeship at the Mokatua garage, which used to be the old dairy factory. He was almost certainly the first apprentice that they had, and it put Ian in good stead for his future. Now, if you're into maths, you'll be able to calculate, because someone in the family home did the other day, calculate the 8 miles that was the distance between Ian's home and a young lass by the name of Shona Sinclair's home into kilometres. Which one of you was it? Told me it was 12.8. So if everyone else has guessed, 12.8, you'll be right. There you go. Yes, 8 miles apart, and it was at one of the many district dances that these two were to meet. There was always a Benedict's ball at either Otaramaka or Mokatua, and although Ian and Shona met on many occasions, Shona herself was able to tell me that they only played up once, if you get what I mean. Shona was nursing at Park Hospital, and by this time Ian was at McEwen's Machinery. Besotted they were with each other. They married at Invercargill on the 15th of February 1967. And it wasn't long before the two of them became a family of 3, with the magical arrival of their baby daughter Sharon that same year. Oh, Sharon. Sharon was followed by 2 brothers, Jeff in 1969, and a much-needed break, Glenn. Well, 5 years later he was born, and I'm guessing it was, you two might have been a bit of a handful for Mum at the time. The family home was at 64 Drury Lane, and life was very busy. Ian had a job change and started working at Southern Transport, and this is where he first met Bill. And it's been a friendship that continued during the years with very many happy memories recalled. When Sharon started at the Grasmere Kindy, Ian became involved in the building committee and became president. A playground was planned and built, but the powers that be deemed it too dangerous and they wouldn't pay for the project. Well, this didn't deter Ian and the committee, however, as they could see common sense and they would never have put any of the littlies at risk. So they carried on. And then they only discovered, well, to their amazement, 2 years later, the same playground concept was copied by the powers that be. So it can't have been that bad after all. When Glenn was 4, the family left Drury Lane and purchased, have I got the address right, 64 Cunningham Street. You were into 64s. Seriously. I had to look at that twice. This was a great place to live as the kids got older, as Dad started up a sandblasting business on a piece of swampy land that was around about 5 acres in Switzer Street. The kids had a crazy time, especially if it was wet and it rained, and they would be out in the paddock in Dad's Mazda ute skidding up a storm. Didn't help with the spark plugs though, but they made up for any misdemeanours by picking up the bogwood. As there weren't too many houses in the area at the time, they could see what Dad was up to from Grasmere School. That was when they were there. Most of the time they were with Dad anyway, because there'd be dust for miles from Dad shovelling the sand. They thought it was quite cool to be dropped off in the old Bedford truck and enjoyed many trips out of town to places such as nightcaps. Ian became increasingly involved within the car world and joined the Sports Car Club and the Southland Vintage Car Club, which he became the club captain. He became a member of the New Zealand Round Table and was dedicated in collecting for charities and teamed up with Nelson Piper for his produce to sell for the causes. From Southern Transport, Ian worked at a car sale in 1972, D&R Smiths or Baird's Autos. Not happy to sit on his hands, Ian decided to do a bit of taxi driving. And to earn extra cash, he repaired chainsaws and cars from home. And if he just so happened to be repairing a taxi from one of his colleagues, he would be fixing that at night time and he'd be getting the colleague to drive his taxi so he didn't miss out. All worked very well. Ian worked part-time at Diesel Motors, and it was in 1980 that Ian and Shona bought Parts World, and while there, Ian became the national president of Parts World and was involved in the national body of the AA and was a part of their legislative decisions, along with being a member of the MTA. They owned Parts World for 19 years, and the business was sold in 1999. In 1988, well, that was a memorable year for the family for different reasons. Ian and Shona bought a home halfway down Avenel Street, halfway to the park and halfway to the pub. And Sharon was pregnant with their first grandchild, Tara. And Jeff, well, he wrote his car off. And Glenn, he started at Boys High. So there you go, a very memorable year. After selling Parts World, they also sold Avenel Street and moved to South Hilland Centre Bush, and Ian went back to Richardson's, but this time he looked after the trucks and carried out all of the maintenance and anything else that was required. This did mean, though, that there was travelling each day, so Ian chucked a card at Shona and suggested that they need to have petrol cards for the change in location, and then Ian retired from there when he was 66. Ian and Shona had become members of the Motorhome Association Southland, which is lovely to see so many of you here today. And after retirement, Ian was called up for use of his talents to check the motorhomes and caravans and issue the containment certificates that they required to keep up with their compliance. Now, I did ask Shona, though, I mean, it seemed to be all work for these two during the years, if they actually went on holiday. Oh, all the time, was her response. These times started in a caravan and they would head to Arrowtown, Wanaka and back to Arrowtown, which became their favourite spot. More often than not, Shona, along with other mums, would be left there for an extra couple of weeks while the men would head back to town and they'd carry on working. But they enjoyed Arrowtown so much that they decided to sell the caravan and buy a crib, which was absolutely fantastic. It was so much fun that word got round with the kids on one particular New Year's Eve, and they had a crew of 30 temporary boarders. They all managed a 2-minute shower the following morning, but the youngsters had had a blast, and along with the compulsory swear box at hand, it didn't take too long for them to earn a princely sum of $200, all of which was given back to Mum and Dad. I don't know how much that would be worth today, but probably quite a bit more than that. Yes. The family had the crib for 25 years. 25 years of incredibly happy memories that they will be able to recall for years to come. After the crib was sold in 2012, the itch was still there to go on holiday, so a camper was bought in 2014, and more great, wonderful times, except this time as Darby and Joan. The connection with the Vintage Car Club gave Ian and Shona the opportunity to travel and meet many people along the way. They attended meetings in Auckland and Oz, and when they first started out and after their family started arriving, they travelled in their 1929 rugby to a big car rally in Nelson. And this was in 1972, and it wasn't a problem to have a po or a potty in the car, lift the little Lees onto it for a pee or a poo, and away they'd go. Nothing was going to slow them up. Their pastimes didn't stop at the cars. Both Ian and Shona had motorbikes, and with a group from New Zealand, including Ross and Lindley Ryan, and others from Oz, they had a wonderful time in America at the Sturgis Rally. The Brass Monkey was attended many times, and the smaller bikes came out whenever the family went trail bike riding at Kettle Flat. There were so many times of hilarity mentioned. The antics at friends' houses who would be newlywed, and the loo paper would come out and would adorn the houses and be wrapped around, or the sound of a chainsaw during the night with the occupants inside thinking that their house was being cut in half. Meanwhile, it was only Ian outside on the end of the chainsaw and a log of wood. Mind you, I did hear yesterday that this trait's been handed on to Sharon and James. You two went into Lizette and Brian Campbell's home and actually started the chainsaw up in their bedroom. I won't tell you what happened, because it wasn't good. The times that Shona was in a babysitting club with 11 other mums, and you had books that you would keep, well, a book that you'd keep, and then every month you'd swap around and hand it over to the next just to give everyone a turn. Ian played his part. On one particular night, during these times, he picked the kids up in old rugby, headed down the drive, didn't get out. He fell asleep, only to be in the wrong driveway. He was at the next door neighbours. Going to the loo outside back in the day, that was fraught with danger as well, as Ian was to find himself in a pickle while having a pee, headed back inside and found himself at his neighbour's house once again, the Hermans. He probably got to know the Hermans very well by the sounds of things. With Alec living 5 doors down in Winton, it's been a good couple of years or so that the reminiscing and talking about old times has continued. Friday night happy hour has kept the two brothers in check, as it used to be Friday night at the Waikiwi pub for fish and chips. I'm going to take a wee breath, and you can think about those Friday nights and those memories now. We're going to have some times of tributes from other people, and I'm going to invite, I'm not going to keep coming up and down, I'm just going to let you know who's going to be speaking, and in their own time they can come up. But firstly, they will have Neville with 3 E's and Sophie, Joss, Malcolm and Nigel Lewis, and then lastly we will have Daryl. Daryl's going to be leading us through a lodge tribute, so he'll be last. So please come up.
Good afternoon. I've only got 2 sheets. These 2 sheets of paper came about on the 27th of the 2nd, 2024. I've been speaking with a very, can you hear me? So I've got to speak loudly, speak slowly, because I've been told by my wife, so you can all hear. So I've got a very dear friend in Christchurch who have done a lot of fishing and all sorts of things over the years, and he lost his brother to cancer early 2024. And one thing he said to me, he said, look, he was the only brother, and he said, I put together a whole lot of memories that I sent to my brother, and he said he got so much of a thrill out of it. I thought, well, perhaps I can do the same. So on the 27th of 24, I typed up this note to Ian, just headed memories. And the first memory starts at Lawnville, where Ian went to school at Makareva School. Of course, I was only about 3 at that stage, so I couldn't remember a hell of a lot. But one thing I do remember very clearly, and I was reminded by Big Brother, sitting there, yesterday, that I had something wrong. And I thought, shit, that's awful. But anyway, one thing that Ian and I were up to was teaching bantams how to swim. And we found out that, unfortunately, bantams can't swim. And Alec told me yesterday that the bantams were his, and I always thought they were Mum's. So you're never too old to learn. So sorry, Alec. Playing farmers. And funny enough, Alec had also written this down in his note that I didn't want to be pinching his thunder, but playing farmer. The little farm that Dad had, Ian, of course, was probably about 5 or 6. Dad had it was 40 acres, and it was out Lawnville where the wool stores are. So we thought, well, we can go and play farmers. So guess what? I was the young one, so I had to be the dog. So the dog had a piece of binding tied around his neck and tied to the tow bar of the tractor. Ian went round the front and pretending he was going to crank up the old tractor, which is an old W12 McCormick. And unfortunately, the mag switch was on and it fired up. Dear Mum had more grey hairs that day. She came tearing out of the house, and the poor little tractor had to sit idling in the shed because she wouldn't let him get back on it until Alec got home to turn it off. Then we moved to Mokatua, our very, very large farm of 150 acres, and the early days were also pretty hazy. Again, Brother Alec used to take me to the Otaramaka school that was spoken of before, on the back of his, on the carrier of his 28-inch wheeled bike, lovely bike. Ian also had, and these stories I'm making them a little bit longer, I'm sorry, but otherwise you wouldn't understand what I've got written. But anyway, Alec and Ian persuaded Mum that I was capable of riding my own bike, and that was okay. But poor old Ian coming down the hill from the Otaramaka school, which is quite a hill, and down at the bridge at the bottom of the hill, poor old Ian face planted, and he was an awful mess. I can just about have nightmares when I think of it today. A shocking accident. We used to have an old boy that used to run around the farm, and he was a bloody old plague, he really, really was. Dad had a 44-gallon drum that was tied up around the fence, and the boy used to drink out half a 44-gallon drum in one go. So these are just memories, as I say. So, Mum had some turkeys around the house, and this particular turkey was a real old bugger, and she had a stick that she used to carry to fend him off. One day she carried a stick that was a bit longer. Poor turkey died when she hit him. And of course, being a little old country household, we had the old outside dunny. So you had to go and dig the hole and bury it. That was part of Ian and my work. So he remembered that pretty well. He also was always adventurous, and he thought our outside dunny needed a light. So Alec had a hut next door to it. So he ran a cable out very carefully, made up the light switch and put it all on, and then pushed the plug on the switch and blew all the fuses in the house because he put the... So he doesn't do it right all the time, but most of the time. And of course, there was the smell of the beautiful old rolls of bacon in the wasn't a laundry, it was a wash house in those days. But I can still smell that bacon, and so could Ian when we were talking about this. And of course, all the flash stuff that come into the house. There was the brand new Morrison 2-stroke mower, the Chamberlain fridge, so Mum didn't have to put the meat in the meat safe anymore. And of course, then came a freezer, and you got the 2-gallon blocks of ice cream in a cardboard carton. Man, did we think we were a flash. And of course, there was the old well in the lawn, and corrugated tanks, the weekly baths on a Sunday night. It was good if you were younger. And again, there's the old McCormick Deering tractor again, and the holly hedge where Dad used to cart up the hay. And of course, there was a Sunday school. Some people may remember the Sunday school. A bloke by the name of, I'm not allowed to use his name, I suppose I will. Jimmy Jeffcoat used to have an old Thames truck, and he had a steel canopy put on the back. And the steel canopy, all the kids would climb in the back and we'd go and have our church. And then on the way home, Jimmy was a younger bloke and he was pretty adventurous, and we'd all be screaming in the back, "Wheelies, Jimmy," and the old truck would get down there sideways and kids rolling around the back. He'd be shot today. And then the old Morris 12 that Dad used to have, 1938 Morris 12, and the road from Mokatoa to Invercargill was an old clay road in those days, and he used to take a trailer in behind it and with a few drums of kerosene on the back for the old case tractor. Dorothy had a pram, and we were going visiting an auntie one day, and the pram fell off the back and it bounced down the old cane pram. You won't remember that, Dorothy, of course, but anyway, turn the page. That's right. This was a terrible story, and this is when you got big brothers who really get you in the shit. Brother Alec, Mum said, "Where are the boys?" And I said, "Don't know. You better go and see where they are." So Alec came up, poked his head up the loft, and he bloody ratted on us. We'd only got into our second bottle of beer. And of course, Christmas was a really exciting time. We'd get the crate of soft drink and that we'd drink over the Christmas New Year period, and there'd be the geese and the turkey and the lamb. Sunday trips were always really, really important to the family. Dad was an only child, and so Mum's family became where we went to. So Sunday trips were always great to go out and see Williams, the Fords, and the Jacks and Joneses, Malcolms, Peaks, McRae's, and lots of other people. Patterson's, of course, was really, really exciting because there was lots of fruit and lots of kids to play with out there. So up in Miller's Flat, and we still see a lot of them, which is really lovely. Hillary's here somewhere. Hi, Hillary. And of course, then there was the old Austin 20 that Dad bought for 15 quid, I think it was. It was a 20 horsepower Austin, and it was quite a big one. It was a 7-seater. Complete vehicle, except it didn't have a starter motor. So Dad was going to make a trailer out of it, but that didn't happen because Ian thought, "I'm a mechanic now, I'm going to make this go," which he did. So Ian mainly proceeded to chop all the back off it and put a deck on the back, and used to wind chains through it and would crank it up and grate our knuckles on the honeycomb radiator, and used to feed the cows with it in the mud, in the mud, in the mud, in the mud. The old hay barn, of course, we talked about before, and the roof getting ripped off it in a big storm, so we had winds back then too. Cars, of course, Ian started, when he got his apprenticeship, he started working on his cars. First car he had was a 37 Morris 8, which was painted sort of a British racing green. And I believe it fell over on its side somewhere near, I don't know what happened, but obviously got it wrong. And then, of course, came along his Morris 6, a 1951 model. And I think it was used for cleaning out a ditch somewhere up around the Otaramaki area too, one particular stage. And it was also painted. It was both those cars in spray painted and so on. And then, of course, came the PAX Vauxhall. That was a really, really cool car. But the most magnificent car that he had in those days was a PBX 1965 Vauxhall. Christine and I just happened to have one at that stage. We hadn't got married. We weren't married at that stage yet. But one of our favourite memories of that was on the Kennington Straight. We're coming back from a ball at Mokatoa, I think it was. And you know, those cars can go side by side at 100 mile an hour and they can't get past one another. And of course, after that, there was the Holmes, the Triumphs, the Jags, the Mondeos, and the list goes on. Now, after those earlier cars, I can't even remember putting a scratch or a dent in a car, but they were always absolutely beautifully presented. Of course, somebody mentioned before about the balls and the dances at Mokatoa. The duck pond down by the creek with his new 16-gauge shotgun. I don't think he shot many ducks, quite a few. Bus trips with Dad to Coronet Peak and ice skating at Mannaburn Dam. He started me smoking. He rolled me 10 cigarettes and put them in a Craven A10 packet, and I'd finished them all before we got home, but I'm surprised he ever smoked again because I could still taste it. Ian, I've got here, Ian, after I started working, Dad had an old Buick and I happened to tip it over on its side on Rockdale Road, and Ian came to the rescue and he organised somebody to panel beat it all for 19 quid, and then when we got it back, Ian painted it all. So he was right into doing all that sort of thing. His mechanical wizardry was really put into real force with rings and bearings in my Morris 1000, and some friends of mine and I went round the South Island and that didn't miss a beat, done really well. Then after we got back, the gearbox was a bit worn, so I done the gearbox on it, and then he repeated the similar surgery on my Triumph Field that I had later on. And I really don't know to this day why Palms couldn't make gearboxes of last. And then, of course, along came the rugby, and I bought the rugby off a friend in Christchurch, and it came down, I paid $80 for it, and it came down on a flat car from Christchurch, and it cost £50, I think, to bring it down by rail. He didn't come round to have a look at it, and he says, and we were quite involved in the Vintage Car Club in those days, and he said, why don't we get this old car going and for the International Rally in 1972? And just to digress slightly, that same rally is taking place as I stand here now. It's been reenacted 53 years later. It would have been wonderful if Ian had been with us so we could have taken that old car up there. Because it's still sitting languishing in the garage at Shon's place. And anyway, Ian said, I think we should get this old car to do it as a team thing and get it all together. And I'm forever grateful he came along to do that, because if he hadn't done it, it would have been a very, very long and arduous task, and a hell of a lot more expensive than what I had to. And of course, he organised the station wagon and towed Dad's from his car sales that he'd only just started at, and towed the old man's my dad's caravan, his dad's caravan for a vehicle. I still have after we got married, Chris and I bought a house in David Street, and still feel really sick in the stomach when we're throwing broken concrete on the back of the trailer, and he didn't lift it quite hard enough, and I can still see that finger with all the peeled flesh in it. It's just one of the horror memories. So, Billy the bus, the Vintage Car Club guys, as a group of us bought this old bus off Bethel Chapel and restored it, and then the floods come along in 1984 and flooded it before we got on the road. But we used to put a trailer on the back from Invercargill Auto Wrecking and put about 8 bikes on it. We had some really, really good times in that old bus. Now, Tiwaiwai, I duck shooting, of course, in Alex Pond at Makatua. There weren't many ducks, but by hell, there were some great parties. Tiwaiwai, dear old Tiwaiwai, to a Tapley, Alec, myself, Ian, always, if I've got here, we could probably write a book about this. But it's such a magical place, and we still go down there. Ian was always there first. He'd be way down there, and he would mow the lawn, so it was all looking pretty pristine outside. So, and Glenn is still out there doing it, so keep up the good work, Glenn. We really appreciate it. Motorhome issues. You organised a place to change bits and pieces when they broke down. North Island trip with you and Shona and Christine. If there was any repairs or damage, he was always the man on the job, and Ian took us places and met people that we would never ever have met, and we've seen some marvellous places. Ian, sorry, I'll be right in a minute. Your help and encouragement over the years, 70 plus years, was amazing and so hugely appreciated. Without your support and dedication, I could never have taken on the Triumph TR6 project, which I restored over a period of 19 months. Your passion and drive for excellence your passion and drive for excellence in everything you do is why the Triumph looks so great today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joss O'Donnell. Ian, I always found, was a man of relatively few words, but what he shared I listened to carefully, and I will try and honour his style today. Ian was a very talented mechanic who finished his apprenticeship in 4 years rather than 5 that it was supposed to take. As you heard in the video, he then went to work for Dad at Southern Transport for a couple of years before moving on and doing his own thing. Around 1998, as you heard, he went back. He and Dad just clicked, and they had a huge amount of respect for each other and worked very closely together for 23 years as Ian restored many, many trucks within our collection. One of the first trucks that Ian worked on was a wee 1933 International, which was more of a tidy-up really and a paint job. The next challenge that came along, which was one of the most challenging for him, was the little Stewart 1 tonne, which is the little truck that you'll see sitting outside in the car park today. As it was the only Stewart 1 tonne left in the world, it was the difficulty of obtaining the parts that made it so complicated. Ian mentioned to me more than once that he and Dad working on those trucks together as time went by, as they were working on the trucks of the same era, they began to connect the dots more easily, and as he said, the restorations became much quicker. Ian was a very efficient operator who always got the job done. He was resourceful, and with his contacts being so wide and varied, he always knew a man who knew a man who knew a man who could help out if required. If he didn't know something, he would simply work it out. One of the most memorable situations that Ian and I often laughed over for years to come was that Dad had sent a friend of his, another Bill, up to the North Island to an auction for him to obtain a truck called the Ruggles truck. So we were in Larnac Castle actually, staying in the stables for Mum's 60th birthday, and Dad was like a cat on a hot tin roof waiting to get this phone call from Bill to say whether he'd obtained this truck or not. So the phone call finally came through, and Bill said to him, "Do you want the good news or the bad news?" So Dad opted for the good news first, and he said, "Well, I've got you the truck." So that was all good. So Dad said yes, and the bad news, and he said, so the truck was probably only worth a few $1,000s. And he said, I paid $133,000 for it. So Dad was like, what happened? And it turned out that this gentleman who owned the truck had a whole lot of nieces and nephews, and one of them had a vineyard, and the truck was on all of their marketing material and all of their collateral, and so they were bidding for the truck. Now, the uncle had left the niece $130,000. She sent her husband along to the auction. He spent the whole lot trying to get the truck for her and blew her whole inheritance. So anyway, Dad ended up getting back in touch with the family, and they obviously sorted that out. But that was a story that often came up. We've got in a frame at Transport World one piece of timber and a rusty old nail, which is the only part left that we have of the Ruggles truck. Up until his death, Dad took tours through the museum, and if he wasn't available, Ian would show those people through for Dad. So he was showing through around 5,000 or 6,000 people a year through Transport World. It wasn't until Dad's sudden passing in 2005 that I really got to know Ian better myself. As a family, we went through a very turbulent time in those early years, and Ian became like a rock to us, always offering really good and solid advice. We could never thank Ian enough for his unwavering support that he showed to all of us as a family. Ian also taught me how to weld. even buying me my own mask and gloves. I found it a great outlet, helping me to clear my head when the going got heavy in the corporate world, and I would regularly head down from head office down to the workshop on the corner and spend time there with Ian, with him showing me one thing or another. Ian retired in 2013, just as we were looking at the build process to open Transport World to the public. Although Ian never actually came out and said it to me outright, I'm not quite sure that he was really in favour of this build and the decision to open up publicly, believing that it would add a whole lot more complexity, complications, workload and a changing dynamic going forward. Perhaps with his wisdom, I could now see where he was coming from. In saying that, always Ian remained supportive right up until the very end. Our deepest sympathy go to all of you, Ian's family. He was a great man and he lived a good life, and he will certainly be very well missed by many. He fought the good fight to stay with you as long as he possibly could, and may he now rest in peace.
Now, I'm not sure if there is a Nigel Lewis about to speak, but my name is Neil Lewis and I have been asked to speak. And Shona, it is a real privilege to be asked to say a few words on our association with Queen's Park Round Table and Ian's involvement just on half a century ago. Some memories become a little hazy looking back to 1976, but what is not hazy though is my memories of Ian, who really was a unique character. A true blue comes to mind. Always the smiling person whenever and wherever we met. Round Table, you may know, was a voluntary social club for young men, aged 18 to 40, focusing on community service, networking, personal growth and fun. Now, I can't speak with confidence to the personal growth part, but I can say we had a hell of a lot of fun networking together, and we did undertake a number of community service and fundraising projects. But I'll get back to that in a minute. The motto of Round Table was adopt, adapt and improve. We were all pretty good at the adopting and adapting, but the improve part was a bit out of our league in those early days. Ian was a uniquely capable gentleman. I don't ever remember him missing a project. If he wasn't leading it or organising it in some way, he was right in the middle of it, and Ian could turn his hand to fix anything. There were others like him, very practical fellows: Dave Wallace, Russell Hughes, Peter Goombs, Neville Jones, Bill Eason. There will be others, and I'm in danger of leaving some out. But I would be there hanging on their coattails. We were, 50 years ago, energetic, bulletproof and dangerous. One activity we thought would be lucrative for our club, given the extensive capabilities and skills just mentioned, was the house demolition business. One of these house demolitions we undertook out near Woodlands was an old derelict farmhouse, which we attacked with great vigour and removed the internal walls one weekend. We returned the next and began the exterior walls demolition. We discovered to our amazement that, having removed all but the last remaining wall, that the very large roof was being held up by the lone remaining wall, ably assisted by this very solid chimney. Ian elected to commence demolition of the chimney, and after the extraction of two critical cornerstone bricks, the whole edifice began to collapse in a cloud of dust and with a huge roar, with debris flying in all directions. After the dust had settled, we conducted a head count to discover all present and unharmed. So, nobody died during that project. After the dust, in later discussions with the executive thinkers of the club, now I have to explain that executive thinkers was a term coined by Ian and Russell Hughes. And that term was to determine those members who gave great thought to the undertakings, whilst the cartel of us just got on and did it. We were the just make it happen guys, and we launched into things probably a little impulsively. With the benefit of hindsight, thank God we had these executive thinkers in our midst. And I'm thinking of people like Lindsay McIntyre, Keith O'Donnell, Don Wallace, just to name a few. There were others, and after due diligence it was decided that due to health and safety concerns, house demolitions should be discontinued. There were other just as chaotic projects and events such as the Clean Spout project, cleaning spoutings for the aged in Invercargill. Well, once again, another health and safety risk to be discontinued. We embarked on Lake Wakatip for one of our midwinter boating and fishing expeditions to the Worsley Valley hut. It was snowing quite heavily. There were too many of us for the small hut, and so some of us had to sleep in our boats. We endured the cold standing around the bonfire late into the evening on the lake shore. And in the early hours of the morning I decided to bunk down in my boat, which was pulled up on the shoreline. As I tried to get off to sleep, I could hear the voice clearly of Ian asking, "Where's Louis?" "In that boat asleep," was the response. "Now let's wake him up and visit him," was the response. Now, what I've just learned tonight is Ian has had some sort of fetish with chainsaws. So clearly I heard this chainsaw starting up, and this voice said, "We'll cut a hole in the side of Louis' boat." Now, I have to tell you, the noise of a chainsaw on the side of an aluminium boat is absolutely horrendous. Fortunately, I discovered that Ian had put the handle of the chainsaw against the boat and pulled the accelerator, and the noise was horrendous, as I said. Another great event for the club was walking the Milford Track. You might remember, Shona. I have vivid memories of the heavy rain and the floods we endured, to the point where we were up to our waists in flood water, attempting to reach the Dumpling Hut. They closed the track at this point for 2 days. Another legendary round table party was held. There were lots of parties in those early days, and always the last to leave, and you guessed it, Ian and Shona. So they might have been the last to leave, but it was always a good day when Ian and Shona called. Rest in peace, Ian, salt of the earth.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Malcolm Hodgkinson. I first met Ian back in the early 1980s when I started attending meetings at the local branch of the Vintage Car Club. I remember it well, as he always made me feel so welcome, as did his brother Neville, of course. I immediately got on so well with Ian as we shared common interests in cars, bikes, and a wee pint from time to time. We attended many rallies together, often with Shona in attendance, along with Rosalind and my in-laws as well. Some rallies were local, but many were at national level too. We always had so much fun and loads of laugh along the way, mainly due to Ian's amazing sense of humour. He was always keen to include younger folk in Vintage Car Club activities, and because of this, our two boys greatly respected him, as they do Neville. I do recall one particular brass mungie we went on. We'd stayed in Arrowtown the night before and sampled a few bits and pieces. Had a great night. The next morning we headed off, and Ian had an issue on the way up where his bike had broken down around Garston area somewhere. So I said, hop on the back with me, we can do this. Anyway, on the Saturday morning, while riding through the Kawerau Gorge. We encountered a hoar frost, as you often do that time of year, and it was just crazy cold. As I was approaching Cromwell, my hands got so bad I couldn't ride anymore. I had to stop. So I got off the bike, and Ian grabs each of my hands and starts to get the blood flowing again, so I could at least feel my fingers. At that point, Ian said, "What are we going to do now?" I said, "I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get on the back, and you can have a turn." Of course, he was happy to do that because it's the type of bloke he was. Ian held many management positions in Vintage Car Club, both locally and for a time in the position of South Island Club captain, a job he always did very well. He was always willing to assist other club members with any issues they may have encountered with their vehicles, as he had amazing practical skills, as others have already touched on, and he could turn his hand to any challenge. During Ian's time at Transport World, he rang me one day and asked if I was happy in my work. I replied, "Not really." He simply replied, "Come and see me then." We went on to work together for several years, and I learnt so much from Ian during that time. One or two have already mentioned how careful Ian was, or not, with health and safety. And we attended a health and safety meeting one day. We were late getting there because we were trying to finish whatever we were doing. You know. So we're right at the back of the room. The speaker was up front, raving on about health and safety things. And someone said, "But what you've just covered is simply common sense." And the speaker said, "There is no such thing as common sense." And Ian, right from the back of the room, went, "There used to be." Yeah. Which actually just reminds me of another story. The spouting had to be cleaned out at Transport World in a certain area, and Ian was given the task. So he grabs a forklift and a pallet and puts the pallet on the forklift, takes it to the job, raises the forks, climbs up the mast onto the pallet, and he's cleaning out the spouting. And someone came along and said, "What are you doing?" "I'm cleaning out the spouting." "You haven't got a cage or anything on your forklift?" I said, "No, I don't need it." "You do?" "No, I don't." He said, "Come down from there." "Why?" "Come down, you'll fall." "No, I won't." And carried on doing it. 3 years ago, we had a national vintage motorcycle rally here in Invercargill. Due to having a sore hip, Ian was unable to ride. I was very surprised at this, as it was unheard of. Ian complaining of anything, really. That pain progressed, of course, to the reason why we're here today. It saddens me so much to have to stand here talking about this man. We've lost a truly amazing person, a very clever mechanic, and until recently a very active member of the Vintage Car Club. An excellent boss and an all-round good bugger. My condolences to Shona and all the family. Farewell, my friend.
Hello. If you don't know me, I am the granddaughter of Jeff and Sharon up here. And I figured I'd write a poem. You pushed for us, fought to stay by our sides. Now you lay peacefully, however still without a fault in your stride. We love you now as we loved you then, from the beginning until the end. It is time for you now. It is time now for you to rest. And don't worry about us. We will do our best. Thank you.
Everyone else has paperwork, so I'll grab mine out as well. For those that don't know me, I'm Darryl Hewitson. I'm a past master of Lodge Winton number 108 and also the Lodge owner. Told you, Shona, if you would turn up. Before I start, Neville, I had the task in my younger days as well of emptying the long drop. It wasn't a task we always enjoyed, but we made a game of it. Once we emptied the bucket, put the side back on top, walked back, done a running leap and landed right on top of it. The outcome was spectacular. Sadly, Mum didn't hold the same view as we did. Shona, Sharon and James, Jeff and Sharon, Glenn and Rach. Hopefully I got those around the right way. On behalf of Lodge Winton, Ian's mother lodge, and also the wider Southern Masonic community, we want to pass on our condolences on the passing of Ian. When I looked up Ian's Masonic record, I thought he was in Lodge longer than I was. So for once, Ian, I actually helped rank you. Ian was proposed into Lodge Winton in August 2003. He was initiated October 2003, passed March 2004, and was raised to Master Mason in May 2005. He was a member of both our lodge and Lodge Kakapo, which was more like a dining lodge. Ian was also Master of our lodge on 2 occasions, 2009 to 2010 and 2011 to 2012. Now, I had the privilege of actually following Ian round through the chairs, so between the gap in 1 year was my year. Back in 2010, Brother Tom is here today, first initiated Filipino into our Lodge Winton. Over the next 3 years, Ian and I put through 13, which was quite a show, quite a lot of work as well and a lot of travelling. Ian also had a fond association with Lodge Tiviot, which sadly is now closed. Neville, you maybe could correct me, was it your great-grandfather or? Grandfather was one of the original masters up there, was he? And so when we're initiating all these Filipino brethren, we take them up there and we try to re-establish the connection between Lodge Winton and Lodge Tiviot. All right, where's my notes? When Ian and Shona moved to Winton, Ian took on the task of, our lodge rooms never had any heat pumps. They had old, big long metal rails underneath the back of the seats. So on cold winter nights, Ian would go down an hour and a half earlier, switch those heaters on. So when we turned up, the lodge rooms were nice and warm for us. He also mowed around the lodge rooms, kept it tidy. And he was our handyman as well. That anything needed fixed, he'd done it. He never asked for anything for it. Though in later years we decided we had to pay him because he couldn't do it all on his own bat. It was quite enjoyable after our practices. We'd go into the kitchen and have a whiskey. Now we learnt pretty quickly that there's certain topics she never mentioned to Ian. Politics, Donald Trump, electric cars, and greenies. But seemingly his views on Donald Trump have now changed a wee, or had changed and mellowed a wee bit. With Ian, you always knew where you stood. Didn't suffer fools. And if you thought you're an idiot, he'd call you an idiot. Lodge also has to thank Ian and Shana for organising our first cycle trail, rail trail. That was in 2008. And some of us are still cycling, probably not as good as we used to be, but Ian and Shana organised a couple for us. We ended up doing rail trails like the Targa Rail, the Clyde Rail Trail, one from Marama to Oamaru, from the summit of Haas Pass to Cromwell, from Te Anau to Tuatapere, from Roxburgh to Lawrence, from Fairlight to Lumsden, and also ones around town and in Invercargill. And to be honest, I think I was the youngest one on those trips, and look at me now. But I remember skipping one of the ones in Invercargill, and to be honest, I had a big night the night out before, so I just was lying in bed, and all of a sudden I heard these bikes, and I heard a tap in my bedroom window, so I was still involved. They didn't let me lie. Fishing trips. Ian used to come along on some of our fishing trips. And we used to have a lot of fun, and I always remember one incident on Lake Monowai. We started drinking beer, and I think at the end of the day, some gin came out. Ian got up to Ill Creek, he was going to stay in the hut. He got up, took one step forward, took about 5 backwards, rolled over a stump, rolled in the bag and just stopped short of the water. So we'd pick him up, and I'd end up having to sleep with him that night. Well, not that way. Well, had to keep him company in his room. He was a good mate to me. I had a few tough times in life, and he was always there to give a hand. And when Dad passed away, he said, "What are you doing for Christmas?" And I said, "Oh, don't know." So he invited me out to your place for Christmas. I don't know if he ever told you that, but no, I didn't take it up. And Jocelyn, he always spoke highly of you and your dad. I was talking to a mate last night down in Fortitude, and he said the same thing. We're one of life's good buggers. There's a young guy, when the young guy catch up at the Waikiwi to have a cup of tea occasionally, and he had dealings with Ian at Transport World. I said, "How'd you get on with Ian?" He said, "Man, that guy knew his stuff, but shit, could he be grumpy." So that's all we're going to say about Ian. He was a good member of our lodge, and he'd be sadly missed by us all. Now it comes to the Masonic part of the service. Sprig of acacia, this is what we place on the coffin. And it goes right back to the Hebrew and Egyptian days, where they used a sprig of acacia to mark where a grave was. From the acacia tree, which represented evergreen and hardness, which meant immortality and innocence. So when we place a sprig of acacia on top of the coffin, we're emphasising eternal life and the remembrance of Ian, our brother. So with the Masons, please be upstanding. Friends, as Freemasons, we gather here today to pay tribute to our brother Ian and to express our deepest sympathy to those that are bereft of his presence. The sprig of acacia is a symbol of our Masonic belief that death is not the end of it all, but that life goes on beyond the grave. Firm in this faith, and in love and in sorrow, I now place the sprig of acacia on his casket. Will the brethren please come forward? Len, this is not goodbye, just adieu. Save me a seat, and mine's a scotch. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you to everyone who has spoken today, and also thank you to the Lodge. We are just going to pause for a moment and watch a slideshow of picture memories that the family would like to share with us. I've got great memories with lots of friends and most especially family. When Ian was told that he only had 3 weeks to 3 months to live, he walked out of the doctor's office and said, "I'm going to prove them wrong." And he did. Ian has been with his family for nearly 3 years since that fateful news, and I guess the only period during his married life that his family have had to themselves would have been only really recently. And they told me that it was just the norm to almost book an appointment to see their parents. There wasn't even a free weekend until the 28th of March, the year Sharon and James were married, and that was the only weekend in a 3-month window. But nothing was going to stop Ian from being at Tara's surprise wedding 2 years ago. He loved each and every one of his grandchildren and great-grandies. But for the past 2 years, places visited such as Alexandra and Queenstown have been few and far between, which has meant that Ian's family have been able to spend valuable time with their dad. Sharon shared with me that they'd all been with Dad the day that he died, and while the others were having a wee break, she was left sitting with her dad, holding his hand, and when he peacefully passed, she shared that she felt a deep sense of calm and love. That would have just been so special. But it really did mean that this determined, strong-willed, bloody good bugger who loved his duck shooting at Mokatua and Te Waiwai Bay, loved a few beers, whiskey or rum, and was fairly much black and white, as we've heard, especially when it came to politics, would never back down and held a good argument, even if it meant his family, especially Shona, would be at liberty to say at his zest to be right. Ian has softened his stance, though, when it came to Holdens and Fords. I think the Fords are okay at the moment, or they have been up to the end of the day, I guess. For 59 years, though, Shona and Ian have been inseparable. They've navigated life's highs and lows side by side while nurturing 3 generations of children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. As Shona begins to walk this new path, she does so with immense grace and dignity. While she is sad at Ian's passing and has accepted his loss, we, though, must remember that acceptance does not mean the end of grief. It is often just the beginning. It is the love of this family that will keep her moving forward, wrapping her in the stories and memories shared over this past week. Those stories won't stop today. They will live on for as long as we all continue to tell them. But knowing Shona, well, you won't be sitting around for too long. I have a feeling that famous booking system is still very much in its place. So if you want an appointment with Shona, you'd better get in quick before she's off making new lifetime memories. Please stand. Ian has unwittingly brought you all here together to say your farewells, and this man will be missed but never forgotten. Letting go has never been easy, but holding on can be just as difficult. Yet strength is measured not by holding on, but by letting go. May you find richness and example in your memories of Ian. May you find strength and support in your love for one another, and may you find peace in your hearts. And finally, to a lifetime of shared love and to Shona's next chapter, may it be as full and vibrant as the 59 years that came before it. Go well and go safely.
can't remember if I cried. Something touched me deep inside.
Yes.